happily, it seems. We see one gentleman there in black who is shouting at them, or woman, demonstrator in black who is shouting at them, going back and forth, very agitated, very animated. But that group is now slowly backing up. They are going to have to be turned around, backed up, and turned around to go back up the on-ramp to get them off the surface of the 101. Gabe Santos is viewing all this from Air 7. Let's go back up to Air 7 and see what you're seeing from up there, Gabe.
Yeah, having the luxury of having this airborne view of this situation, you can really kind of see what CHP is trying to do. They have made a coordinated attempt of shutting down both sides of the freeway. And as more resources got onto the scene, they have a call out to all of CHP, basically. So they're sending anybody and everybody that is available to come to the downtown area and help quell the scene here now that it has spilled onto the freeway. So CHP now, they have closed both sides of the 101 freeway at Los Angeles Street, and we saw that line of officers start to make their way down the southbound lanes of the 101. And it looks as if they are trying to make a circle, or at least a semicircle, around some of these protesters so that they are not just pushing them back and pushing them further up down the freeway. They're trying to get these people off of the freeway. And you even saw somebody on a scooter that was possibly taunting officers that eventually maybe got a little too close to an officer, or maybe came close to striking an officer with that scooter.
Hey, James
they
Thomas.
were immediately taken into custody. So CHP not taking any chances with anybody, and they are slowly and methodically pushing these protesters. The idea is off the freeway.
It's ridiculous. I agree.
Get to the scene
Very
here. We're
ridiculous.
going to see that start to develop, as you see right there. Groups of about 10 or so CHP officers in full riot gear moving down. Those are going to be the northbound lanes of the 101 freeway.
Trying to take back over the highway.
This line around the group of protesters that we see there. And then slowly and methodically you see this line of officers on the northbound side.
But it started to look good, so
lanes, but those protesters
I decided to go live for people
you
that's
see
not
those
seeing
officers there very slowly and
Here's what
methodically
people think,
pushing
too.
that line of protesters.
Think it's okay for these people to go on the highway and block traffic?
And on the surface streets.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Let's bring back in Bruce Thomas,
okay
our law enforcement expert.
It
seems like they are just taking
officers?
one step at a time, Bruce, slowly pushing back on this group of demonstrators. I don't think they want to start anything, get too violent, go too fast. They are slowly, methodically making their way to clear the surface. We saw yet another flashbang go off above this crowd. But talk to me about what the mindset is of these CHP officers as they are now face to face with these demonstrators. They want to get them off the surface, but they don't want to start any violent confrontation.
Air National Guard.
You're 100% correct.
And the governor
what they're doing is they're negotiating.
of California is in a helicopter above.
We've got to open this freeway up.
Throwing a fit that you don't want the National Guard help.
Slowly,
it's obvious,
very slowly,
that
push you back off.
They don't have control of this
situation. We don't want to
situation.
use force. We don't want to take anybody to jail.
At all. Yeah. What's wrong with people these days? I don't know.
Yeah, and it does seem to be effective right now. We have not seen the necessity for batons. We see some pushback here. It looks like some folks are just kind of dead weighting their bodies up against this crowd, forcing those officers to push them back.
On that highway,
but they are moving back. They are locked arms now, arm in arm, and don't want to be removed, but they are slowly pushing back. So the officers will take a couple steps, gain that line,
lucky I'm not there.
Reset, move forward again, and hopefully they don't want to start any major confrontation here again. All of this is playing out on the streets of Los Angeles. We are awaiting word from the mayor of this city. Karen Bass is set to address
and they were throwing bottles,
any moment now.
Rocks.
We were told around 4:30 was the time to get ready for her to speak.
Officers,
we have not heard from her as of yet, but we are awaiting word from the mayor. Again, excuse me, in direct confrontation with the federal government. President Trump kind of name-checked her personally last night on his
we saw how the governor
social
handled the fires, right?
Outlet.
I don't think you can handle all these people.
Social media outlet writing, this is last night. If Governor Gavin Newsom, that's a favorite of the president to write it that way, of California, and Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles can't do their jobs, which everyone knows they can't, then the federal government will step in and solve the problem. Riots and looters, the way it should be solved. So he's saying the problem was riots and looters. Said it will be solved the way it should be solved. He was also recorded on camera today at a press briefing being asked about a couple things with what's playing out here. Rules of engagement for the National Guards members who are now federalized under his control on the
John
streets of
Smith.
Los Angeles. What their rules of engagement? They're carrying around
Doing
these
fine on this Sunday.
soldiers can be inserted into war, and so they're carrying the weaponry as such.
So what you have here is you have a
Against citizens of
standoff.
Los Angeles.
You
What
got
the rules
protesters
would
taking
be
over
for
the
them to
highway.
employ those deadly means.
You got California Highway
the president
Patrol
just said we
fixing
want to
to
keep
engage
peace. He was asked about the
protesters on
proclamation
the
that
highway.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth put onto social media, saying
you
if the
got the
violence
governor throwing a
continued,
fit.
then members of the
The
U.S.
president of the
Marines
United
would be
States
deployed against
activated
U.S.
2,000
citizens. That
National
can
Guard.
only happen
Just a
under
couple of months
use
ago,
of the Insurrection Act.
we
And the
watched houses
president
get burned.
today was asked what would be deemed an insurrection, and he neglected
it's
to
safe to
answer
say that governor
specifically.
don't
So
have
here we
control.
go. That looks like a smoke bomb thrown on the surface of the 101.
A
And
mistake.
let's go back up to Gabe.
And why
Those
shouldn't all these
demonstrators now
people be
kicking that
arrested?
smoke bomb back towards the officers. It's like a macabre game of
Yeah.
soccer
The
with
guy
this
in the
thing
green
right now.
on the ground.
But they are making a move trying to get
Even
these
he's the
folks
first
off
one
the
in
freeway.
handcuffs.
Yeah, that's, I can honestly say I've never seen a soccer game between protesters. And no, that is one protester being taken into custody.
Oh,
One of those
take 'em
CHP
all.
officers got behind him as he was going in for that kick and just pretty much tackled him. And that's what CHP is doing here. With that soccer game going on with this tear gas canister going back and forth as those CHP officers try and kick it back into the crowd, and then the crowd kicks it back. You're seeing CHP kind of slowly pick off some of these protesters that get a little too close or get a little too aggressive in their movements. And there you see another CHP officer again kicking that canister into the crowd, and a protester now throwing it back towards the CHP officers. So this is kind of a dangerous situation here, because you basically have projectiles being thrown back and forth as these protesters now, at least with that tear gas canister that has put a little bit of distance between that skirmish line, as you could see that person being taken into custody earlier, kind of wrangling with those CHP officers there just out of frame. CHP with that tear gas, obviously it's not something you want to breathe in. It causes your eyes to burn. It causes you to cough. So that pushed back the protesters just a little bit. Those CHP officers wearing full gas masks, so they're able to kind of tolerate it a little better. If you don't have a gas mask, if you just have any other kind of mask, you're going to be getting the full effects of that tear gas canister. So that's what's creating a little bit of that buffer. As you can see, that CHP officer in the middle, he's trying to, as Bruce Thomas was saying, he's trying to negotiate with some of those protesters in a very, kind of matter-of-fact way, saying, get back, put some distance here, and continue moving off of the freeway. As you can see, this one individual waving an American flag, continuing to yell at some of the officers. I have a feeling if he gets too close, some of those CHP officers might pick him off as well. And that's going to be the process. You saw that skirmish line that was on the opposite line of the freeway. It has now crossed over the center median, and they are doing this very coordinated approach to pin these protesters off the freeway. And, you see someone
someone tried
else
to break
being...
through.
Yep, and someone else being taken into custody right there, and very quickly. And there's someone. Okay, it looks like another CHP officer grabbing another fellow officer there. Probably got a little too close for comfort, but you could see just how different the picture looks than what it did 10 minutes ago. Earlier, you had a very wide semicircle of these CHP officers, and now they are narrowing in. They are pushing all of the protesters off of the freeway, which is the goal.
Yeah.
And they are doing this in pretty quick order, and anybody who is getting a little bit too close or a little too aggressive, they're just picking them off and arresting them right then and there.
Yeah,
and this is all part of the plan.
One by one. Gabe, thank you. I want to bring in Sergeant Daniel Keene with the California Highway Patrol, who joins us on the phone watching the CHP execute this clearing of the 101 freeway. Sergeant, thank you for joining us. Can we talk about what's happening right now on the 101?
Yes, sir. Right now, we currently have our CHP Special Response Team that responded to the area to assist with getting the protesters off the freeway. Accessing state highways, it's dangerous. It's not the right spot for a protest, and it puts the protesters, the motorists, and our officers at risk. And we are going to move to get them off the freeway and make arrests. If officers start to take objects and are getting hurt, or other people are getting hurt, it's not going to be tolerated.
Yeah, and we have seen that several times now, these officers coming under attack and taking several people into custody. Can you tell us a little bit about the training in situations like this? We have seen tremendous restraint from a lot of these officers who have been under attack for much of this day, facing these people off who are screaming at them, throwing things at them, and yet maintaining control and trying to de-escalate. How important that is and what you're seeing in terms of execution of that training.
Yes, our special response team goes through additional training, and we are put through situations like this. And this is what separates us is the professionalism. We're going to stay calm in these situations and use the appropriate amount of force when necessary to effect an arrest if we have to. But we fully support everyone being able to voice their First Amendment rights in the right location. And we will support that. But on the freeway is not the spot for it.
And we're seeing it play out once again, another person taken into custody. A lot of times in these situations, we see unified command go into effect. Has that happened? And how does the presence of National Guard troops who have been federalized kind of change that, that as it plays out here today?
The CHP is always prepared for mutual aid to other law enforcement when it's needed. And that's just what we go with. We are the state police. So if there's other areas that need help, we are going to send resources if it is requested through the proper channels to do that.
Sergeant, can you tell me how it's going to play out tonight once these protesters, these demonstrators are taken off the freeway, how it's going to be ensured that they won't make their way back onto the freeway tonight? Will that be CHP? Will that be local? Once you get off the freeway, it turns back to city's jurisdiction?
It's going to be both. It's a fluid situation. CHP is there. We are going to protect any state facilities and our roadways and our highways. And if anyone attempts to take over the freeway, we're going to take swift action to get those roadways back open and keep everyone safe to continue on with our mission of providing safety, service, and security.
Yeah, I know this operation has only been happening for a little bit. Do you have any reports of injuries from any of your officers from anything today?
I don't have those numbers right now, if there was any, but there's always that possibility that officers may get injured, and we hope to prevent that. We hope that people do not throw items at our officers, and that it's just done peacefully, and they go to areas that they can voice their opinions in the right spots.
Okay. Sergeant Daniel Keene with the California Highway Patrol, thank you so much for helping us out here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a busy day for CHP, law enforcement in general, as once again we are seeing people take to the streets of downtown Los Angeles. This is now day 3 of unrest in our city. We are awaiting word from LA Mayor Karen Bass. She is set to hold a press briefing at any moment. We were told it was set to happen at the bottom of the hour, and we are approaching 15 minutes past that point. And we will see what she has to say. But, you know, anytime the mayor at this point is now going to step in front of a camera, we will likely see her side by side with, you know, smoke bombs and unrest and flashbangs and arrests and officers under attack. So no matter what the mayor says, this is all playing out under her watch, which has been a point of focus for the president and those who work in his administration, saying she is unable to maintain control in this city. I'm sure she will be asked about that tonight when she speaks to the media, if it's opened up to questions about why and how this was able to happen in her city. These are thousands of people, so obviously only so much can be done, and demonstrations are a vital part of our country. Protest is protected by our Constitution, and it should happen, but obviously it should not turn to violence, and that has happened several times in several different locations here today. So as we await word from the mayor, we are watching the California Highway Patrol slowly push these demonstrators back up the on-ramp from the surface of the 101 freeway southbound, and they are being hit with pepper spray and smoke bombs and flashbangs as they want to get these people back off of the roadway, the 101 and the on-ramp. Gabe Santos has been watching this from overhead from Air 7 and has an eagle eye of what is playing out, because that crowd is now gathering pretty thick on the on-ramp. Gabe.
Yeah, Jory, and that's kind of what CHP was intending on doing. This is the CHP Special Response Team, and they are trained in these SWAT tactics and tactics on dealing with civil unrest and the like. And you know, we've all seen protests through the years that involve people blocking freeways, and they often last a lot longer than what we've seen here today. We've seen a very quick response from this CHP against specifically the Special Response Team. They arrived here quickly, and they very quickly, as we saw, made that half circle around these protesters and slowly and methodically kept walking forward and pushing these protesters using smoke canisters further and further up this off-ramp and back onto surface streets. So ideally, CHP will get the freeway open in pretty short order because there's a, you know, this is Los Angeles. A lot of people are on these freeways on a Sunday afternoon. So that is the goal, to get these freeways open and you know, take on the protesters from there, because LAPD is also dealing with the other side of these protests near the federal building.
Hey, Gabe, I do want to alert everybody as we wait to hear from LA Mayor Karen Bass that I know a lot of people are turning on Channel 7 on this Sunday waiting for Game 2 of the NBA Finals between the Pacers and the Thunder. That is going to happen at the top of the hour. We are going to turn to national programming, and you will be able to watch the game. We will continue our coverage of what's happening in Los Angeles, streaming on our ABC7 Los Angeles app. You can stream on our website, abc7.com, and you can find us on social media and make your way to our stream as well. So again, abc7.com/live will get you coverage of what is happening in downtown Los Angeles as we continue to follow the unrest and the demonstrations that has been playing out here for the last 3 days. Thousands of people
I agree. Arrest them all.
converging on downtown Los Angeles. It began as several different demonstrations,
I
all
agree.
gathering into one large mass, which has once again broken up into several locations, both at the federal building, which is where the bulk of the activity we have seen this weekend, 3 straight days.
There was a lady stuck
happening
on
at
that
the federal
highway with a
building,
young baby in
at
the back
Alameda
seat and
and
couldn't get
Temple.
through.
This, however, is happening at, I believe it says Spring Street. as
Don't
the
look like the
101
governor has
freeway,
control
and
to
the,
me.
LA Los Angeles Street
He's
overpass
pissed off
is
that they
one
sent in
overpass down.
2,000
So there are people
National
on
Guard
both,
troops.
looks like 3 different overpasses watching what has played out here. Demonstrators taking over the 101 freeway. We see CHP officers right there on the right side of your screen in tactical gear. They are continuing to face attacks above. Projectiles continue to be thrown at them, and they are responding with flashbangs, trying to disperse that crowd. A large plume of smoke emerging from that crowd as these officers are doing their best to get these folks off of the road surface. On the left side of your screen is a live look from Air 7. It looks like things might have stalled a little bit. The CHP officers have slowly marched these people off the roadway, up the on-ramp, and it looks like they have slowed to a crawl here as the large crowd is gathered behind that skirmish line. It's tough to get that many people to move in a direction which they don't want to go, and the officers don't want to start any kind of panic by bull rushing through that crowd, which could be catastrophic, people getting trampled and the like, and they do not want to see that play out. But the crowd is continuing. Look, another group here has splintered off, and they are making their way down. Is that Alameda Pass Union Station? I'm just trying to get my bearings. Yeah, that's Los Angeles Street. Down the hill is Union Station. So there's Union right there. Gabe Santos, how many different groups can you spot from up above, Gabe?
About 3, I would say. You have a group that's making their way up north on Los Angeles Street. I think they've caught wind of the situation going on the 101 freeway. And this is a group that is on the north side of the 101 freeway, on the Chinatown side of things. And it appears, Rob, I don't know if you could zoom back in on that. It appears that they are starting to move, well, at least it looked like a group of them was moving in one direction or another earlier. I'm not sure if there are people on the back of that truck making announcements, trying to rally the crowd. That might have caused some movement in a direction towards the truck. You also have all those people that were on the freeway that are now, a lot of them off the freeway, and now have to move in various different directions. So you have a crowd of people north of the 101 in the Chinatown area. You have the crowd of people right here on the Aliso and Los Angeles Street intersection. Most of those people were on the 101 freeway earlier, and you have this crowd of people south of the Federal Building near Temple and Alameda. This is where that motorcycle incident that we've been talking about a couple hours ago, that's where that happened, where we had reports of a couple of motorcycles. You could see there one of them still lying on the ground. A couple of motorcycles apparently made their way towards the skirmish line. The words that we were hearing from CHP is that or from those LAPD officers in the skirmish line, is that those motorcycles crashed into the skirmish line. Unknown how fast they were going, but we tactics, and they have the right here. They have the gas masks, and they have the tools to deal with large crowds. As you can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So there you can see 6 people currently in CHP custody. We saw these people kind of being plucked from that skirmish line, as some of them got a little too close, got a little too, maybe the CHP officers thought they were getting too rowdy, and then those people were immediately taken into custody. CHP will probably have a paddy wagon or another large vehicle to put these folks in for processing, and then taken to jail after that.
Yeah, we saw those people being marched down the ramp and likely being taken to the CHP vehicles, which are either under the overpass, protected under there, and they'll load them up and then drive them off the surface of the 101. But some order is being restored here to the freeway, and excuse me, and we will see how this plays out. But there is a logjam there on the on-ramp at the bottom of your screen, as the CHP is continuing to slowly press this crowd back to the top, up to Los Angeles Street or Main Street, and make their way back and clear the entire roadway. Again, we are waiting word from LA Mayor Karen Bass. We expect to hear from her in some kind of press briefing here in the next little bit. I do, in the meantime, want to read a post from former Vice President Kamala Harris, who many are thinking might be the next governor of the state of California. She posted to social media, quote, "Los Angeles is my home, and like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division." The former vice president continuing, "This administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. Protest is a powerful tool, essential in the fight for justice. And as the LAPD, mayor, and governor have noted, demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. I continue to support the millions of Americans who are standing up to protect our most fundamental rights and freedoms." A mention there of being mostly peaceful. I guess that's an unmentioned condemnation of violence, but not a direct condemnation of that violent and tactics that we have seen from these demonstrators, many of them today. We have started to see many taken into custody. a lot of projectiles, bottles, and as we saw from ABC News' Matt Gutman, rocks and chunks of concrete being hurled at these officers who are trying to clear the situation. We did see rocks and projectiles thrown
How
at
can this be
vehicles,
okay?
law enforcement vehicles
I
that
agree
have been
with
making their
protests.
way through the back window
do
of
not
a
agree with
Suburban.
them out
I
in
believe
the
a federal
eyewoods.
vehicle was shattered as we were covering this live today by people who were throwing things at
This has
any
been going on
vehicle that
since
passed.
Friday.
On the
Scott's
right
on to
side of
take
your screen
control
is a
of it.
confrontation we
Hey,
saw
Cyborg
on
Mama, much love to you, dear.
surface of the 101. This is the southbound 101. A sad game of kick the can between CHP officers and those demonstrators with that tear gas canister. In fact, you're going to see one of those if we play this out. The last person to touch this winds up being arrested here, taken down by an officer who was trying to kick that canister back towards those officers. So that was one of, I'd say, at least a dozen people from this particular group who has been arrested, taken into custody, and removed from the situation. And this has continued face to face up this on-ramp. The CHP slowly marching these people back and away from the 101. They want to regain control of the roadway. The officers are still in tactical gear down on the surface itself, getting ready for containment so they can hopefully open this back up to vehicle traffic, which has been stopped now for at least an hour as we have been on the air here. The northbound side was open for a time as the southbound side was overtaken, but now both sides have been shut down for some time as the CHP is trying to regain control. All of this is happening as large crowds gather in other portions of downtown, including outside the federal building, the Roybal Detention Facility, where detainees have been brought throughout this weekend. And we have seen 3 days of unrest there, demonstrations and confrontations, and that is where we are looking right now. Gabe Santos in Air 7 really quick before we hit the top of the hour. One last check with you on what we're seeing at the federal building there.
Yeah, Drury, we're keeping an eye on the scene at the Federal Building and the scene on the freeway. The scene at the Federal Building appears to be pretty static, and it has been since that motorcycle situation that we saw where two motorcycles breached the skirmish line. 2 people were taken into custody there. The motorcycles may have hit a couple of officers there and caused minor injuries to officers who were treated at the scene, and those officers are in stable condition there. We believe those were LAPD officers. So we're keeping an eye on the scene at the Federal Building, and we're keeping an eye on this large scene on the Aliso ramp to the 101. Large crowd there. It looks to be a couple hundred people, but CHP has been successful in their efforts to clear the protesters off the 101 freeway. So unknown how much longer the 101 freeway will be closed, probably for another few minutes as CHP maybe gets these people further up the off-ramp and completely onto the ramp. And this may, you see another person taken into custody there as a couple things are thrown at officers, and that person may be getting a little too pushy with the officers. That's that person earlier with the green cap with the American flag. So one person being taken into custody there, a little scuffle happening a little further up the ramp here, and in situations like these where you see projectiles being thrown at officers and things being thrown around, sometimes you see those smoke grenades being thrown out by these CHP officers because they have those at the ready to forcefully push these crowds back as you see things get a little bit pushy, a little bit tense.
Okay, here we have LA Mayor Karen Bass again. NBA Finals will continue on ABC7. We'll continue to cover this on streaming.
To protest, that's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands. We're working with officials, we're organizing resources, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation, but we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly a plan, and there is clearly no policy. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that we stand with all Angelenos, no matter where you were born. The First Amendment right gives you the ability, again, to protest peacefully, but it does not give you the right to be violent, to create chaos, or to vandalize property, and that will not be tolerated. So I call on all Angelenos to continue expressing your right, your anger, your outrage, but to do it peacefully. And I just have to say that all of you were there Friday. Everybody knows what happened Friday. A workplace, several workplaces were targeted and raids took place. Now, in the beginning, the administration said they were just looking for dangerous felons, violent people. It's hard to say that that's what they found at a workplace or in a Home Depot parking lot. When this happens, it terrifies people. It sends a sense of fear and chaos in our city. And you well remember a few years ago in the last administration that kids were afraid to go to school, parents were afraid to go to work. This impacts all of our city. You can't terrify the workforce, and then expect for people to get the jobs done. So if you think about a father that went into a factory and now his family doesn't know where he is, the detainees have not been allowed to speak to legal counsel. That is a marked departure from what has happened in the past. When you think of a mother that might be working in a household, taking care of children on another side of town, that impacts that family as well as her family. And so this is something that I think should not be happening in our city. And I join with the governor in appealing to the administration to rescind the order to federalize the National Guard and allow the National Guard to come back under the control of the governor. So with that, we can open it up for questions. Yes.
Mayor, these protests that were demonstrations, I should say, did start out peacefully. You've been here since
Right.
in the morning.
Right.
But then they scattered and people were moved
Right.
around. Where is the LAPD in terms of being here to be able to deal with that and maybe stop them before they go on that freeway?
Sure. Well, I think that basically they were overrun. But what is happening now is that the freeway is cleared. The California Highway Patrol, as you know, is in charge of the freeways. So they have moved all of the protesters back. They still might be there, but they are beginning to be dispersed. But LAPD is on the perimeter, so LAP is actively involved. You know that there were hundreds of protesters on the freeway and thousands of protesters off the freeway. So there is a joint collaboration going with the CHP, the LAPD, and then frankly, the National Guard. But you also know that the National Guard is deployed to protect federal property. So there is a National Guard troops in Westwood at the federal building and also here downtown.
Next question is
Chase.
Mayor Bowser, have you reached out directly to the federal government, or is this you doing so right now with the media here? Have you tried to reach out?
No, my disappointment is I've been talking to the federal government for days. I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. I was trying to encourage the administration that if they deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, it would create a sense of chaos. It's the last thing our city needs. Our city is still trying to recover from the wildfires. And you just think about how so many people were impacted by that. And that's an example of where the administration was helpful. And to go from that situation to where we are now is just really tragic. And I think it's so unfortunate. It's the last thing Los Angeles needs.
When you say you've reached out to the federal government, have you?
We are listening to
No, I
LA
did
Mayor
not.
Karen Bass address her city amidst unrest in Los Angeles. If you're continuing on ABC7 on air, we will switch things over to the NBA Finals Game 2 between Indiana and Oklahoma City. We will continue to cover this, what is going on in Los Angeles, and continue listening to this press conference from Mayor Karen Bass, streaming on abc7.com and the ABC7.
Holman, I talked to the U.S. Attorney. So I've talked to several members of the administration.
Yeah, I know you've been watching these protests. First off, what do you see when you're watching this? And I know that you've mentioned being worried about the safety of the protesters, but are you also worried about members of law enforcement in the middle of this?
Well, I'm worried about everybody. I'm worried about members of law enforcement. I'm worried about the safety of the people who are peacefully protesting. I'm worried about the businesses that might get vandalized. I'm worried about the that took place around the federal building. All of that. We do not need to see our city torn apart. And the idea that the federal government that should be assisting us is a contributing factor, I think is very tragic. When I see the protesters, I know that so many people are affected by this. Their families are affected by this. People are terrified.
How do you think that ban?
Anytime it deteriorates into violence, that is a problem, and it absolutely messes with the overall message.
Next question right here in white.
Yeah, hi Mayor. George with Reuters. My question is, can you share a little bit about the conversations you've had with the governor, and how long you expect for the National Guard to actually be in Los Angeles?
You know what? Thanks for asking me that, because we're hearing all from the federal government.
We're gonna go right here, and then we'll go right here.
So, Mayor, the reality is people seem to still be getting violent. How do you plan to deal with that as we move forward?
If people get violent, if people break the law, they will be that. So peaceful protest is what is needed. Peaceful protest is a part of our American tradition.
Right here. Mayor, last night, the U.S. Attorney seemed resolute that these raids would continue regardless of what's happened over the last 2 or 3 days. In your conversations with him, has there been any kind of attempted compromise or somehow lowering the temperature, at least till things cool off locally if they want to continue, or are they just doing it regardless of how everyone else feels?
Well, I mean, I think what we see now is they're doing it regardless of how anyone else feels. My conversation with the U.S. Attorney, though, was not focused on that.
We're gonna go right, or
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, hi, Frank.
It appears that the LAPD is cooperating with ICE in this operation outside the Metropolitan Detention Center. They moved in, they were peaceful protests.
President Trump sent in 2,000 National Guard, and her and the governor had a fit.
Flashbang and less lethal munitions. Comment on that, because
Sure.
the LAPD is not supposed to be cooperating with ICE.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that LAPD was involved with the flashbangs. But anyway, let me just say that what happened there is that when one branch of law enforcement says they need help, another branch of law enforcement is going to respond and is obligated to respond. And so the minute that protest left the federal building, then that's when LAPD were involved. So the cooperation that you're referring to, I believe, is the cooperation around coordinating with ICE in terms of raiding workplaces or arresting people who are undocumented.
right here in the gray.
Hi, what's your exact understanding of the timeline for how long the National Guard will be here? How long the raids are going to continue? Are there going to be daily raids?
I have no exact timeline. I cannot tell you that. That's part of the problem, right? We do not know. I have heard a variety of days and weeks. I certainly hope that this is over. The last thing this city needs is civil unrest, and the last thing this city needs is civil unrest that's provoked.
Quick follow-up. So I've seen LAPD fire point blank foam bullets over bullets into the ground, but in some cases directly at protesters. Can you speak about what kind of orders they're under in terms of handling peaceful protests?
I can't in terms of the specific orders that are being given by the chief or the other commanding officers.
So Mayor, will you be speaking then to Chief McDonald?
I'm going to speak to him in the next few minutes.
Okay, great.
Yes,
So
I'm
what is
leaving
then
from
the
here
plan?
to meet with him.
Great. What is then the plan for tomorrow? Because let's say presumably this does not end.
Right. Well, you know, I think one thing is that because our city has always had a very robust immigrant rights movement and infrastructure and institutions that have been around for several decades, there is a history of having peaceful protests here. Now, you know, like any crowd, if we're talking about after an athletic event, everybody celebrates. There's always a handful of people that tend to be at the end and tend to hang around and might get into mischief and violence. But that's not the people who are putting on the protests. I tell you that to say that when those protests have been organized, they've been organized in a proper way. The problem is what happens at the end, and that's one thing that is difficult with crowd control, whether it is a political protest or whether it is a football game.
Did you say you talked to Tom Holman?
Yes, I did talk to Tom Holman.
What did he tell you?
Well, he just listened. I mean, the main thing he said was he appreciated that there was a call for no violence. I'm not exactly sure what was expected, but, you know, I was encouraging him not to deploy the National Guard. I knew that the order had been given. The president had signed the order to the governor that he was federalizing the National Guard, that 2,000 troops were going to be deployed, but that didn't mean that they would actually be deployed onto our streets. So my conversation with him was trying to encourage, to prevent the deployment. Obviously, that did not work.
And Mayor, to be clear, are you meeting with the police chief and anybody else, or just the police chief?
The police chief, the sheriff, and the governor.
Quickly, Mayor, you're talking about peaceful protests. We're hearing the noises outside as this crowd is getting closer and presumably more violent as they're coming up through the streets here. I know it's nice to talk about peaceful protests.
That's not peaceful, what was happening. It's not peaceful for people to be on the highways. It's not peaceful for people to throw rocks or bottles. That's not peaceful.
So then how do we reconcile the difference? Obviously, there's frustration with the Trump administration and the feds, but as LAPD and the Sheriff's Department try to distance themselves from the actions of these immigration actions and work being done, they're against authority in a lot of ways. They're standing outside City Hall, which is your office. It's not necessarily against you. How do you distance yourself, but also kind of try to keep it peaceful at a time where it's anti-authority?
Well, and let me just tell you that I don't think there's any equivocating on nonviolence. And if you are going to entertain violence, if you are going to try to take over a freeway, then you are going to suffer the consequences of doing that. I don't think that LAPD, the sheriff, and certainly not myself, are not shying away from statements like that.
Any details about what the National Guard mission is going to be?
I'm sorry?
Any details about what the National Guard mission is going to be within LA, whether it be deployed?
Well, what I know right now is that the mission of the National Guard is to protect federal property and the federal building, which is why you have only seen them there. You have not seen them out in the community or anything like that. And just in terms of, to close, to wrap up, I just have to say that, again, our city has been through a lot since the beginning of the year. And now thinking that there is a large percentage of our city that is terrified, that is not going to know if they go to sleep tonight and they go to work or they go to school, will that be the last day they do that? Will that be the last day they see their family? We can't have this in our city. Los Angeles is a city of immigrants where 50% of the population is Latino. A percentage of the populations are from Asian countries and from all over the world. And we embrace all Angelenos. It doesn't matter where you came from or when you got here. But the most important thing right now is that our city be peaceful.
Is it me? And
so
me or she looks fake as hell.
Expressing your
same lady who left during the fires, same lady that let all them
is
people's houses burn
appropriate to
down.
do, but it is just not appropriate for there to be violence. And I don't want people to fall into the chaos that I believe is being created by the administration completely unnecessarily. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
You have been listening to Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass address the situation playing out in her city. As she has been speaking, we heard our reporter Tim Caputo, who asked some fantastic questions of the mayor during that. As that was playing out outside of the City Hall and the surrounding downtown area, we have seen some things happening at the bottom of your screen from Air 7. That is a Waymo car now on fire. It looks like a lot of those cars have been targeted by the demonstrators, tagged and destroyed.
Listen, I believe in peaceful protests. I find this to be ridiculous. I agree. They're saying fuck America, but they want to be here. Like, I don't get it.
Those batteries are, once they're exposed to air, you can have a really violent explosion. Gabe Santos has been watching what has been playing out here for some time. During the mayor's press briefing, Gabe, what have you seen?
She's so stupid.
Well, Jory, we've seen a very rapid escalation of things here. We have both Air 7s over the scene here, one of them on a couple of Waymos, one of them that's on fire. I'm personally working to get eyes on where that Waymo is because my attention has been focused on the scene at Alameda and Temple, where we had a number of mounted units from LAPD try and make a move towards City Hall on Temple, and they were met with a lot of fireworks activity. One officer reporting Molotov cocktails, unknown if those were actually Molotov cocktails or whether that officer was maybe confusing the fireworks with something else. So those mounted units from LAPD were trying to make a move.
But if they get away with this here,
City Hall,
it'll happen in
Temple,
your city.
and they were met with
needs to be
a
stopped.
lot of protesters that were reacting with aggressive behavior. So those LAPD
I don't
units
find it
actually
to be a
backed
peaceful
away
protest.
on Temple
Sorry.
and backed up from those protesters. You could see those mounted units right there just trying to regroup and reassess the situation, because as soon as they started coming towards City Hall on Temple, near this very intersection, this is going to be Los Angeles Street and Temple Street, they were met by some aggressive behavior by some protesters, and you can see that mall area on the bottom left corner of your screen, this open
Yeah,
park space.
anything to cover up
A
what
lot
they
of the
did during the
surfaces there have
fires.
been tagged by
I mean, the governor
protesters.
and the
Even
mayor
when
was horrible
I
during
got
the
on
fires.
the scene here a couple hours ago,
Jezebel
those
Witch,
walls
this
were
is
bare,
Los
and now they
Angeles.
have been tagged, and a lot of
What they're trying
graffiti
to
has been
say is
applied
a peaceful
to those walls. So those
protest.
protesters
Don't seem
have
so
been pretty
peaceful.
busy on some of these other
What you
streets
just
near the
missed
federal building,
is
while
them
our
taking
eyes
over
were
the
focused
highway.
on the situation on the 101 freeway. Both lanes on the 101 freeway are still closed right now, but CHP has
Hey,
pushed
Bianca,
the
I hope you're
majority of
feeling
those
better, love.
protesters off of
I
the
agree,
freeway
it's not
and
peaceful.
onto the Aliso on-ramp to the 101 South, and CHP is continuing to very slowly and methodically push those protesters up the ramp. They kind of hit
Listen, Bianca spent yesterday in the hospital. She's bleeding from her stomach. She needs prayers. We don't know what's wrong with her. Hope you're feeling a little better, Bianca. Sorry you've been ill, dear.
Back and away from the freeway. It'll be interesting to see what role CHP will continue to play there. And this is my first view of the Waymos. These are going to be, it looks like these are on the north side of the 101 freeway on Los Angeles Street. And from our other angle, from our other Air 7, we were seeing that one of them was actually on fire. I don't see flames at, I do see the flames further to the right, but we're going to hold on this shot right now because we can see one individual breaking windows on those Waymos, and there's that other Waymo that's on fire. And all three of these, I think I counted 4, have been completely hit by graffiti, a lot of paint, a lot of words and statements being placed on these Waymos. And this is quite an interesting scene, something that you wouldn't see maybe in the riots of 2020 and before that, because we didn't have these automated vehicles that are kind of easy to corner and easy to stop.
Thanks, Jay
And
Thomas.
protesters
Yeah, we
appear
all
to be
love
taking
Bianca here.
advantage
We
of
want
that
her to be
and
well.
using these automated vehicles as maybe billboards for their message. And unknown what, you know, the Waymo's response to this is going to be. Do they just kind of shut down and stay put? Obviously, when they're set on fire, they're probably going to be you know, completely destroyed.
Yeah.
But these are owned by a company. They're not owned by a specific individual. So at least, you know, it's not a sole individual that is now at a loss for a vehicle. You have these corporate vehicles that are probably insured, so that's at least one bit of good news. But this is obviously not anything we like to see. We don't want to see things burning in the streets. We don't want to see all these acts of vandalism that we're seeing now taking place on the Chinatown side of the 101 freeway. And we're seeing a lot of these protesters move northbound on Los Angeles Street. I'm not sure if that was from the activity that we saw a little bit closer to Temple and Los Angeles Street, where those mounted officers from LAPD kind of clashed a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if that's what's spurring some of these protesters to continue northbound on Los Angeles Street, or if they're just kind of moving forward of their own will. This collection of Waymo vehicles, I think this must have
Catching
happened in the
vehicles
last
on fire,
20 minutes or
that's
so,
a
because
peaceful
we were-
protest?
I had
Like
eyes
the
on
fourth
this
one
section
they
of
burnt
street
today? Come on.
before Mayor Bass started talking, and this was not here. We were seeing a vehicle, I think that truck is there a little further. If Rob pans to the left, there was a truck with some people on the back of the truck, possibly speaking, making announcements, and I thought that was maybe one reason why people were continuing northbound on Los Angeles Street. But now we see these Waymos that may have just gotten, you know, these automated vehicles maybe don't know that there's a protest. They don't have that programmed into their software to be aware of that, so they probably just drove into it. And people, you know, they know that if you stand in front of it, they just stop. And people are obviously taking advantage of that right now. And you can see one person leaning on the hood, taking a selfie with that Waymo that's on fire, and a lot of messages from protesters being painted on these Waymos right now on a Sunday night.
Yeah, things devolving in some parts of downtown, and you do not want to see this happen. These are electric cars. Any car that is burning is going to send off some pretty bad toxins into the air, but an electric car in particular once it hits that battery, you're talking about a very difficult job for firefighters. This is going to continue to burn those lithium-ion batteries, and the size of them and the amount of power they have in them. Once they catch fire, this is going to be a bad situation. You hope it's not an explosion and people aren't too close. But I know if I were near a burning electric car, I would get away as quickly as I can as the destruction continues here. We're hoping to talk, and here we go. Someone else starting a fire in one of these vehicles. Ran out of fuel, thankfully, before that one could ignite, and now hiding their identity. But again, this is something, it's a volatile situation. I don't know if police are able to move in to this scene and try and calm things down, get these folks out. The fire department at some point is going to have to be called in to put this car out, and now a major conflagration in this car. We saw in Compton yesterday when that car was lit on fire in the middle of the intersection. The firefighters had to come in and had to be protected by police. You know, you have a line of officers
do one more hit,
be able
guys,
to
and then we gotta
move
go.
in and get those firefighters safe, and even those firefighters had projectiles thrown at them. So again, this car is now fully engulfed. People are trying to set the other Waymos on fire, and as this is playing out again, we want to try to get to Tim Caputo, who just heard from Mayor Karen Bass. I just heard from Gabe Santos in Air 7 that there's not a lot of time left. Are they out? Okay, they are fully out. They're out of fuel and have to go back to the airport to refuel. So we hope to check back in with Gabe Santos shortly. And as we wait again, we're hoping to talk to Tim Caputo, who just questioned the mayor of Los Angeles directly with some very pointed and very impressive line of questioning, because it sounds at times that the mayor is trying to have it both ways. She blamed all the chaos that has played out in Los Angeles this weekend on the Trump administration's actions, and at the same time, on the other hand, said that violence is not acceptable. And so admitting that there is a lot of violence playing out amid these protests. And so that is clearly the people who are committing the violence are not Trump administration officials. So they are to blame as well. So, you know, it sounds like she's having it both ways. Let's zoom in back on that car, because we're starting to see some explosions emerge from that. You see the fuel now on the street now burning on the surface of Los Angeles street, and people still maintaining a really close proximity. You see those flames coming out of there really fast and powerful. Something in there has caught where we're talking about a volatile, dangerous situation, and you hope that this is the only car that is set ablaze, and you still see some flames there on the roadway as that fuel, whatever fuel source is now burning, has now made its way onto the street itself.
And Jory, sorry to interrupt, but looking at the Waymo right there, I was looking at what kind of fumes the Waymo sets out whenever it's set on fire like this. I'm not even sure if the protesters even realize that just how toxic and dangerous these fumes can be. Hydrogen fluoride, carbon monoxide, just these flammable gases that can potentially explode.
They're just electric cars that's run by batteries.
See an explosion
More
happening
dangerous
from this Waymo if it's on fire long enough. And just all these protesters in that area, again, this air, it's just so toxic, and it just really makes you question, why would they do something like this?
Yeah, that's just mob mentality at this point, just watching things burn. That's Nico Kazori joining our coverage here. I'm Jory Rand as we are continuing our coverage.
You guys remember when the Black Lives
in
Movement
downtown
went through?
Los Angeles, and we
All
do
the
see
cities were burning?
possibly some officers moving
that was
in
Democratic
now
governors
to
too,
try and
not
gain
trying to make it
control
about
of this
Democratic and
situation.
Republican,
This is
but
still. Is
because
this, I
Trump's
saw some
in
smoke in the
some
background,
National
so
Guard
I'm
and
not
they
sure
don't
if
want
that's
the
a
help.
flashbang
Don't
smoke
look like
or
they
whether
have
these
control.
officers are moving in on this situation. But a
They don't have
large
control
crowd
at all.
gathering here. I think this is Los Angeles Street.
It's been going on since Friday.
Cars from the fleet of Waymos that now service Los Angeles have been attacked, vandalized, and destroyed. This one on the right of this window is now fully engulfed in flames, and it just continues a day of unrest in Los Angeles that is in response to moves by the Department of Homeland Security and ICE under the Trump administration as they continue to take those in this country illegally out of the United States.
Absolutely. And we were talking about the National Guard a little bit earlier. They're deployed. 2,000 troops are here. And pretty much President Donald Trump basically bypassed Governor Newsom's authority, and he deployed the troops here. And that makes you think that's another thing that these protesters are angry with, and that's another reason why these protests are getting a little out of control. Tensions are high. And earlier during that press conference, Mayor Bass did say, she said, Angelenos have the right to exercise their First Amendment right, but peacefully and not like this.
Start taking over the highway. It's not peaceful.
here. This is the scene in downtown
But
LA.
you
Again,
ride two
these
motorcycles into the
protests,
police.
they
That's not
erupted amid
peaceful.
the ICE raids, and it's the third day of civil unrest. Jory's been talking about this
Hey,
for
Dempsey.
hours now. You have been covering this since 1 this afternoon. Is this when
Yeah,
it
it's
started?
been going for hours. We know there was a demonstration this
I
morning.
was
It
sitting
stretched
here
into
watching
the
this on my
afternoon,
own
and
and
then
said,
two
oh,
large demonstrations converged into
a lot
one.
of times
Governor
people don't know
Newsom
what's going on.
responding
It's
to the
crazy.
president today with a number of posts to social media, and some of this is stuff we have never seen before in the United States. So the governor responding to a video of President Trump speaking to reporters today, saying there will be law and order in the streets of the United States. The governor writing, inciting and provoking violence, creating
Thanks,
mass
Chaos.
chaos, militarizing cities, arresting opponents. These are the acts of a dictator, not a president. The governor also writing officially to the Trump administration, he said, to rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return them to my command. This is the governor posting to Twitter. He writes, we didn't have a problem until
As
Trump
the
got
governor
involved.
is
This
over
is a
the
serious
city in a
breach of
freaking
state sovereignty,
helicopter. Okay.
inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order. Return
So don't you
control
guys
to
think if they
California.
didn't
That is a
send
message to the
troops there
President
and
of
the
the
stuff
United
that's going
States.
on,
Attached is a letter
do you think the
written
governor
from
and
the
the mayor
office of the governor
can have it under
to the
control?
Trump
Because they don't got
administration
control
and
now.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, signed by David Sapp, Legal Affairs Secretary in the office of Governor Newsom.
All the
And it
National
goes on
Guard
to
is
list
right
ways
there
where
at the
the
federal building.
governor and the state believe it's unlawful for the president
He's
to have
not scared. He's
federalized
stupid.
members of the
He
National
thinks he
Guard.
can handle it on his own.
This is done under
Obviously, he
Section
can't
10
lift those cars
of
on
the legal
fire.
code as how they federalize U.S. troops. But this lawyer writing that Section 12406 states that, quote, the president may call into federal service members and units of the National
Right.
Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to, one, repel an invasion of the United States by a foreign nation. That has not happened. Two, suppress a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. There is an argument that I'm sure the president will make that stands here. And three, execute the laws of the United States when the president is unable to do so with regular forces. That
It's
is
like
not
the
the
NBA
case
game,
here as well.
NBA game
So they will look to
17
likely
so
number
far.
2 there of those three citations
agree.
within the
They
code.
gotta get it under control.
But the office of the governor writing the
I
section
think they
further
need the
states that
National Guard.
orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states. And therein lies the
I
problem.
believe
This was
many of
not done at the
Californians will
request
say
of
he
the
ruined
governor of
California.
California, which is typically how the federalization of National Guards troops happens. We've seen it happen quite often, in fact. Niku, we saw it happen during the fires. We've visited these sites and seen National Guards members guarding entrances and exits. We saw it during the 2020 civil unrest. National Guards members were on the streets, and we have seen it in the past. But it happens at the request of the governor, not in opposition
Right,
to the
and
governor.
it makes you think this is so hard to predict what can happen next because this is just it's not going in the right order. So I mean, just like you said, so it's really hard
Because
to
the governor would
think
have never
what are the
asked
next
for help
steps
because he's
because
too
things
stupid.
have happened out of order. And looking back at that Waymo, you can see now an even larger crowd gathered around this Waymo. Now
What
they're
do they
sitting
say?
on top
Try
of the
that in a
car.
small town,
And
right?
a little bit earlier, I think I saw someone with a skateboard trying to break into the Waymo. Not sure if they're trying to set this one on fire too, but that other Waymo has been on fire, I'd say at least for the last 20 minutes,
Yeah,
probably.
It was in the trunk, and now the car is just completely engulfed. And these folks are just standing here. One person with a hammer on the windshield. We see that man on the roof with a skateboard trying to just basically break anything off this car that they are able to do. And I don't know if we can pull out and see if any officers are in this area. But again, this situation has devolved into chaos when we have seen quite a bit of it this weekend play out in Los Angeles. And you start to see the smoke rising in this wide shot. It's a disturbing sight to see a fire burning like this in the midst of a crowd making their way through Los Angeles. Again, we just heard from LA Mayor, there's the explosion that we've been waiting for to see if it would happen. That car has now exploded as it likely is reaching the lithium battery that powers these electric cars. I think typically they're found on the, beneath the car, along the frame of those vehicles. And so once the fire reaches down there, it is very difficult to put these fires out. I think I remember a crash on a bridge recently where there was some kind of fuel, a vehicle that could not be put out, and they encased it and basically just dragged it off of the bridge. But here we have you know, some knuckleheads trying to continue to damage this car, do whatever they can to get
Again, these protesters, they're so close to that fire. They're breathing in all of the toxic gases. Again, we talked about carbon monoxide, hydrogen fluoride. Those aren't things that you should be breathing in. And they're just feet away from that car that exploded. And it makes me think, is that the plan for the second Waymo? I believe they're saying five Waymos. And it's just a terrifying thought to think.
Yeah, try that in a small
they want
town.
to light all 5 Waymos.
Wouldn't happen, right, guys?
And looking at this crowd, you can see a few different flags within that crowd, and they continue to move. I believe this is Temple Street.
Babies are doing good.
Street, I think
this is happening on Los Angeles,
Last
just
Wednesday, they were
across
6
the
weeks old.
101. Once the
Doing real
California
good.
Highway Patrol came in to clear the 101
Mama got out
freeway,
for a little bit
the
today.
crowds kind of
Went
had
and got her
scattered
nails done.
all across downtown Los Angeles. This
Thank you for asking.
large group. Oh, there's
Winds
2
are
cars on
doing
fire now,
great.
so they were able to alight a second car. And we're going to see this play out here on both ends of this string of 5 Waymo cars still burning here.
And this is the group in Chinatown. Now, we have a few different scenes, so this is just one of the scenes. I'm curious what the other
See, I don't
scenes
see how
look like
people can
at
think
this
this
time.
is
If
okay.
they've calmed down a little bit, or
Does it look like
this is
the
still
governor
a
has
very
control?
large crowd. I mean, I've barely seen any improvement in the last few hours. So it looks like these protesters, they are not going anywhere, and it seems like this protest is dragging into the evening hours.
It will continue. You know, it's fair to say the sun will be down.
Today was her first day away
long
from the
before
baby since she
this
called
crowd
me.
breaks
Wondering if
apart
her
for the
husband was
evening.
going to be able to
Can we
handle it.
pan around and see if there's still a group at the federal building? I know
I'm
our
doing well.
vantage point has kind of shifted
Cancer
here.
they cut out of my face.
We're on the west or
The
south
scars
side
are
of,
almost
okay, we do
healed.
have, this is Temple and
My head
Alameda. So
itches,
this
so that
crowd
means,
is still gathered. Are they sitting down?
The nerves are starting to heal.
I'm not sure. Are
I'm
they
scratching the
they are
daylights out of
all
my head, though.
Look like they're sitting down.
Okay, so this is Temple
Yeah, I
and
assume
Alameda.
that's
They
for
are
the
here for
ceiling.
the long haul, it looks like. Not really doing anything to provoke anything from these LAPD officers, but showing they are not planning to
I agree,
go
this isn't a
anywhere.
protest.
This says Aliso, so it's backed up a little bit. They have cleared the intersection of Temple and Alameda. Oh, this is on the
Seattle last
backside.
night.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the top of the hill. Here's the bottom of the hill. This is where
in my
the focal point of much of the unrest has been. This is Alameda and Temple down here, and there's still a
Yeah.
small group here, but this is
Yeah.
where we saw the large
My
confrontation this morning.
migraines are
as
still
those
there,
cars
but they're not as
continue to
bad, so
burn
things are
a
starting to
few
get better.
blocks away. There is the motorcycle that
Starting to get
remains
better.
on scene. There was a time when there was a skirmish line.
7
LAPD
months
officers
already.
who had cleared
Wow.
the entrance to the federal building and pushed people down the hill into this intersection of Alameda and Temple. At that point, 2 people on motorcycles approached the skirmish line.
Oh,
And again,
thank you,
there's
Holly.
some, we're not sure whether they
I appreciate
intentionally
it.
drove those bikes into the
Beach
officers,
Baby and
or
Leroy,
whether they were just doing
they
a
have
U-turn or
new
some kind of
twin
maneuver and lost control and
grandbaby
hit the
girls.
officers. Either way, they hit the officers. 2 of them suffering injuries. Both drivers have been taken into custody and will likely face several new charges in addition to just what the other protesters
I agree.
obstructing a
Mama La
federal
Stronda.
or local
Outright
authority,
destruction.
once those officers were injured.
And
as
the
we
governor
head
don't
back
want
over to Los
the
Angeles
National
Street,
Guard's help.
you can see the 101 freeway is now moving northbound. The southbound
So
it
seems
not
like
moving.
it's okay. It's still closed. The southbound side is still closed, but northbound is open.
Yeah,
Is this what we're
southbound is
saying?
closed.
Okay.
You can see the officers, CHP still on the surface. Mike, what were you saying? Got it. Okay, so we have, again, on the right side of your screen, a live view from the ground from Los Angeles Street. That is what you're seeing right now at the top of your screen on the left from that aerial view from Air 7. So we have demonstrators spread out to at least 3 or 4 different locations. The largest group, I'd say, is over by the 101. I'm sure many of these people were the folks
Let
who
them
were
lock
on
them
the
all up.
101 freeway just a short time ago. They were slowly backed up the on-ramp by CHP officers and pushed up onto side streets, surface streets once again.
And then we saw.
Yeah, was that a flashbang? Are officers
And
moving
tell
into
me,
this area now?
what did the
I
mayor
just saw
accomplish
another
by getting on
explosion.
there
It looks like
saying
people
that
might be moving out
the
of here.
president made it
Hopefully,
worse
in this
by
area,
sending the
they
National
have
Guard
their
when they don't have
respirators. Again,
control?
this is toxic
Like,
gas,
I don't
and there are
understand
just
it.
way too many people in this area.
Don't give a
I
shit if she's a
remember
Democrat or
a little bit
not.
earlier, we did talk about how many people have been charged
She
with
looks like a
assault
fool.
of a
They don't
deadly
even have
weapon on
control.
officers.
She's
So
gonna get on there and start
many
talking about
people
how bad
have
it is
been
that the National
facing
Guard's
that
there.
charge.
Send them to their
And
neighborhoods. That's what I
these
say.
numbers are just
Send them to their
insane. Just
neighborhoods.
seeing the large crowds of people, and they're still gathered here around the 5 Waymos, even though this one has exploded, but hoping
Oklahoma
an
City's
officer
winning
or someone is
26-20.
moving in to try to at least disperse this crowd, get them away from this Waymo that's now putting all that black smoke in the air.
I don't know if we
I
can,
won't
if
keep you
there's
guys
any
on
way
here
we
too
can
long.
see
I
if
was
the
watching this by
officers,
myself and went,
kind of gathering.
you
getting
know, I
ready
wonder
to
how
put
many
this
people
out
knows this is
because,
going on.
The more that these cars are allowed to burn,
And the
and
California Highway
the
Patrol
longer
was
this
moving
goes
in,
without
so I was like,
police
oh, I'll just go
intervention, the more
live.
dangerous it becomes. That's the closest we can see, I think, is just 2 officers over on the far side of the 101.
Yes, I
It is
agree
a
that
dangerous
government is messed
situation
up.
for those officers to have to walk into an area like this.
Absolutely.
You know, things are volatile, and 2 cars are
Yeah,
now
as a matter of
burning.
fact,
We do have
Bianca, there is
Tim
a
Caputo, Eyewitness News reporter who was in
an
that press
Australian news
conference with
station
LA
there
Mayor
because I
Karen
saw him
Bass,
earlier.
asked some very impressive questions. Before we get
Very
to the mayor,
loud.
Tim, you
Out
are
of
now on
control.
the ground. Can you tell us where you are and what you see?
Yeah, so we're essentially on Los Angeles Street. The interesting thing is on this side of the 101, Los Angeles kind of turns and goes to Alameda right at Union Station. A lot of the protests in the past have ended up on this because you're on either side of the 101. What you're looking at here you saw from above is the cars that are currently on fire. The police line is on the opposite side of these car fires at the moment from where we're standing. Part of the crowd have been moved back in this direction, but you see they're not exactly moving.
I agree,
They've
arrest them
essentially
all.
just moved the line back and are standing in place at this
Yesterday
point.
they had the
That
U.S.
thick black
Marshals
smoke
bus there.
obviously going
taking
right
them.
into the air where we're
They
standing.
were attacking the bus.
And the crowd kind of mingling its way down, Tommy, if you want to point down the street towards Union Station as well.
I just
kind
watched
of
the
working
thing on
its way
El Salvador
Alameda and
earlier.
Los Angeles as well. They're essentially all in this area. The federal building itself, obviously the focus of these protests and these demonstrations is on the other side of the 101, but as often happens with these rallies and protests and demonstrations that are in this general vicinity, they get on either side of the 101, and where this is kind of on the near side opposite where the federal building is itself. The crowd itself, by and large, a lot of bystanders taking video, holding up signs, kind of standing, and mostly onlookers. There are a handful, a number of agitators within that crowd. It doesn't necessarily reflect the whole of the group itself. Sure, you were mentioning we were just up in the mayor's office a short time ago talking with the mayor about everything that's transpired over the last couple of days as well. Obviously, the mayor concerned about the violence that has erupted, but she is obviously taking the stance of saying that the Trump administration's immigration policies and these ICE raids that have happened in greater Los Angeles is the reason that there has been a kind of uprising and resistance from the people here in Los Angeles. Angelino's taking to the streets for 3 straight days now, and the crowd seems to be getting bigger as more and more people, some coming from the train station itself, are kind of descending on this area. You know, when we were in Compton yesterday, when they set that car on fire, it took a minute for the fire department to get there and put that car fire out. I can tell you from either angle from where we're standing, it would be nearly impossible to get a fire truck in, maybe from over here by Union Station, but obviously this is burning strong with people standing by, and that's why police have backed off a little bit at this point. Obviously, we're keeping a fairly safe distance away from the kind of strongest of the action. You hear the explosions as well from those cars. Obviously, people standing close by there, not necessarily a safe area to be. When we were parked just underneath City Hall by the mayor's office, the crowd rather was kind of moving their way up the street. They're all over this area, as I'm sure you've seen from Air 7, but obviously at this point, this is the main focus. The smoke could be seen from all around as these folks converging around this part of the rally at this point.
Yeah, Tim, now that we have you, I do want to ask you more about what the mayor said. You asked her about the violence and if she's blaming the rioters, the demonstrators who are turning to violence, but she led her press conference directly blaming what has played out and the unrest in our city on what the Trump administration has done, but also saying that if you're causing violence and you're attacking law enforcement, you are to blame as well. So it almost seemed like she was trying to have it both ways.
To a degree, right? So this is, it's nuanced and it's difficult, right? I mean, there was an awkward moment where she's talking about we want it to be peaceful. We could hear flashbangs and fireworks going off outside her office in City Hall, literally outside the windows of the mayor's office. We're hearing these loud bangs as she's saying, folks, keep it peaceful. that point is come and gone. That is clear to this point. You see it behind me, obviously. The peaceful part of it is not happening. But here's the interesting juxtaposition, of course, because the protests and the demonstrations are against those federal agents, whether it's ICE, the FBI, Homeland Security, anyone federal agents assisting. LAPD, CHP, and the Sheriff's Department are all distancing themselves from the immigration operations that have been happening. But here's the interesting part and what makes it difficult. When there's violence against those federal officers, when there's graffiti on the street, cars on fire in the street, now it's in the hands of LAPD. Now it's in the hands of the Sheriff's Department. They can't sit idly by and let this happen. This is no longer setting a car on fire in the middle of the street about preventing an ICE raid from happening at a Home Depot in the Fashion District. So that's the awkward juxtaposition where I think the mayor is kind of playing both sides, but is also being responsive to the fact that while people are upset and they're emotional about what's happening with the federal government, with immigration from the Trump administration and the feds going to businesses and homes in Los Angeles, the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, the CHP, all the local agencies are towing that fine line where they're saying, we're obviously not part of immigration and anything going on there, but we got to keep the peace on the streets in Los Angeles. And so it's tough because their presence alone is sometimes agitating the crowd. The police presence, the flashbangs, the tear gas, those are provoking the crowd to fire back. But it's tough because police are not part of immigration, but now they're part of these protests and these demonstrations. It's a nuanced issue that is playing out in the streets here in Los Angeles, and I think it's important to note folks are trying to be cognizant of the fact and the emotion that the people out here have, but also realizing setting cars on fire, throwing rocks at police officers, assaulting people on the street is not okay regardless of what your cause is.
It's a difficult job being mayor. You have a lot of constituencies to tend to. And as she did also say, the mayor said she's for everyone. She wants everyone to, she's not for one side or the other side or the other side.
Let me show you something.
Come and have a look at this. It's the prison that's outraged the world. You don't cry a tear for them at all.
No.
Trumpeted by the American president as the ultimate deterrent to what he calls criminal immigrants.
These are animals.
Tonight, we go inside El Salvador's brutal Supermax jail, where they throw away the keys. You guys all gang members?
Yeah, all gang members.
As their government's merciless measures brings the White House calling.
We're getting them out by the thousands.
But is Trump finally taking things too far?
They are committed to cruelty and brutality.
Hello, I'm Michael Usher and welcome to Spotlight. When El Salvador's mega prison opened 2 years ago, it was quickly deemed one of the most brutal in the world. Human rights groups say being in prison there is akin to the death sentence. But for Donald Trump, the jail is one big opportunity, a solution, he says, to America's influx of criminal immigrants. The US president has already relegated hundreds there and is vowing to send more. Reporter Liam Bartlett goes inside the controversial prison.
It's become the president's favoured weapon in America's immigration battle.
They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further.
A blunt message of just how far President Donald Trump is prepared to go in his zero-tolerance approach to illegal immigration.
When you look at them and you look at the crimes that they've committed, they hit people with baseball bats over their head, and if they rape 87-year-old women, absolute monsters.
You know, let them be brought out of our country, let them live there for a while, let's see how they like it.
And just in case you didn't get the message, his Homeland Secretary spells it out.
First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
The Trump administration has deported hundreds of suspected South American gang members despite a federal judge blocking the move.
In March, 238 Venezuelans were bundled onto a US military aircraft and flown to what is arguably a living hell, best known for its terrifying welcome that is designed to break inmates on arrival. But does the world have any idea of where these people are being sent?
How is it possible that hundreds of men who have never been formally accused of anything, that have never
of this size and intensity, they often make their way onto the 101, and it has happened yet again today. At the bottom of your screen, you can see the roof of City Hall. That is where
Aware of that, so they probably just drove into it, and people, you know, they know that if you stand in front of it, they just stop, and people are obviously taking advantage of that.
I wouldn't even say that, even close to that. But because it only takes a handful of people to light a car on fire, a handful of people to throw fireworks into a line of police officers, a handful of people to vandalize vehicles, to vandalize and graffiti walls, those get the attention, and rightfully so. I mean, obviously you have a huge burning fire in the middle of the street here. But it doesn't seem like this is necessarily encompasses the vast majority of the people here. It's just everyone gets caught up in the hoopla as they wanted to come out and kind of have their voices heard.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a matter of a couple people
National Guard
ruining
is
things
coming
for everybody else. What might have been a peaceful demonstration certainly is no longer that, as those cars continue to burn and explode. We've talked about those are Waymo, so they are fully electric.
Okay.
And once the air and the fire reaches those batteries, it will go off like that. It's very difficult to put out.
Yeah.
Tim, okay. You okay? Okay, we'll get back to Tim in just a moment. But again, it looks like at least three. I'm sure those guys are working on trying to set the other two on fire as well. And you can see that material just melting and burning and covering the surface and still continuing to burn on the surface of the street.
And we just heard that Tim Caputo was moving, so we'll have a different look, different angle from the protest downtown. But where Tim was standing and we heard those explosions in the background, I think he said it was a combination of the car fire, fireworks, and something else. But
right. Well, we did see those flashbangs going off, so it looks like officers are somewhere, unless that is those are just simple fireworks. But we see those poofs of smoke, and those typically are flashbangs trying to disrupt the crowd. And we do see some movement coming now towards the 101 from the top of our screen. So that would be north to south. That would be coming directly from where Tim was standing. I don't know if there's any police activity pushing these folks this way, or perhaps just the smoke. It's getting too hard to breathe. More explosions here from those cars, but we do have a decent-sized crowd watching these cars continue to burn. Otherwise, as Tim said, things do look relatively peaceful at this hour. We saw the folks at Aliso and Alameda sitting down on the ground. We saw the folks at Temple and Alameda just kind of waiting it out. It's broken down to just a couple dozen people at that location. And so things seem pretty, it's hard to say that with three cars burning, but things do seem relatively calm, minus these cars that have been set on fire.
Exactly. There are a few scenes, and it looks like this scene is the worst one that we have been seeing because, like you said, the other areas that we've seen, we have seen people sitting down, and this is just the worst of it, seeing these three Waymo cars on fire, which hopefully someone can get a handle on them very soon. But again, it's really dangerous for any kind of police or the fire department to even move in on a situation like this. So they have to really handle this gently. It's difficult. It's hard, especially with.
I'd like to see all these.
Are there three on fire? It looks like
the governor's neighborhood
on fire.
and the mayor's neighborhood.
There are 5 Waymos in that area, but 3 are on fire.
It's a precarious situation. You want to maintain control and get order back in the city, but if you try and do so too in a certain way, you're going to devolve here into some really bad confrontations. And so. You know, there are discussions being had right now by law enforcement about how best to handle this situation. Once the demonstrators made their way onto the 101, it took CHP a little bit of time to come up with a plan and how they were able to do that. And here we have the 101 back open again. So same kind of situation here. There's a large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
So it looks like next to that big, the car fire, we have that wide angle. Is that the one on the other side? Is that a closer look at the car fire?
Yes.
And if so, there's people around it. They're taking pictures,
Right.
and it's just, they don't even mind all the toxic fumes in the air. But the scene has definitely looked like it's less crowded than what it looked like about 30 minutes ago. So at least people are moving away, but still really dangerous, because again, these EV batteries, this can explode at any minute. And just the air, I mean, Tim said it smelled like a dumpster fire behind him.
Yeah.
So.
And poor Tommy, his photographer, was back at this location last night with Amy Powell dealing with that. They were hit with tear gas, and so he's back at it again. There's another explosion coming out of that car. We thank all of our photojournalists for being there, and our reporters on the ground. This is not easy stuff. It's a very precarious, dangerous situation. We saw one station in town. Their reporter and photographer were basically kicked off of scene by demonstrators. It was unsafe for them to be there. They pushed them out of there. That is why we're being very selective with where we put our reporters on the ground today, because we don't want to put them into harm's way. But simply being on the ground, you can see how volatile it is. Tim was just a short ways away from this and had to move their situation because the crowd might have been moving their way. And you, as a reporter, with a camera there, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you can't get out and put yourself in harm's way.
And it could be so tempting because you really want to show, you want to get the message across and really show these images, these videos of just what it looks like there, but at the same time, you really have to worry about yourself, your well-being, and that's also the case for the police officers that are out there too.
I don't think it's going on in New York right now,
I'm sure
but
they're caught in that.
By the end of the night, it's probably going on in many cities.
Struggle as well.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like Tim Caputo has found a new location.
Right,
Let's see where he is and what is going on as we search really for the bulk of this crowd. That's the 101 South that is still shut down. The 101 North is moving freely again. And what a shot from Tim Caputo's camera location. Tim, tell us about what you're seeing now.
Well, full disclosure, we didn't actually move locations. We were kind of double parked and had to move the van to let some people out, because once we got to this location, what's ended up happening, and no surprise here at Los Angeles Street, cars cannot go down. So they're pulling this kind of U-turn to go back down to Alameda Street here towards Union Station. So we are in the same spot, a pretty safe distance away. I can tell you, there are rowdy elements of this crowd. That's why I'm kind of keeping my head on a swivel as well, because some of the anger pointed at the media, some of the anger obviously pointed at law enforcement, at the mayor's office, whomever they perceive as potentially
all
a
the
person of
Democratic
authority at
states
this
where the
point.
governors
So we're
are
just
standing behind the governor of
watching our
California.
backs as well as we watch what's going
Like
on
it happened in your
ourselves.
state
But
if you guys
as you
didn't
guys
fight
have mentioned
governor.
too, is this car trying to make a U-turn here, this Range Rover red one in the middle of the street. These cars are still burning, and the vast majority of people standing on the sidewalk here and standing even in the street here, mostly just getting video. It does seem like some of the attention has moved away from the burning vehicles as this crowd is now moving back towards the federal building across the 101, back over to Los Angeles, Aliso, and even Alameda Street, essentially where the protests we've seen the last 48, 72 hours have been focused. Obviously, this is where it began, but it eventually kind of bleeds out and filters out into the adjoining and adjacent streets around here. And that's what happened in this area when these cars were set on fire. It does seem, at least where we're standing right now, while it does seem from our angle there are a handful of people standing on the street, the crowd is actually moving farther away across the 101, potentially back towards that federal building. It's tough to tell from here, and frankly, I'm not going to try to get any closer to show you a closer perspective from it, but it does seem like just from the visuals here, as the fireworks continue to go off, the crowd is starting to move away from these burning vehicles. Hopefully, maybe that gives the fire department the opportunity to get in here and try to douse these flames before any gas tank explodes or anything gets worse here. It remains to be seen, because we haven't seen a whole lot of law enforcement or first responders in this immediate vicinity. And understandably so, obviously, with folks so angry and things on fire and fireworks going on, is not exactly the safest place to be at the moment.
How you said that you are keeping your head on a swivel. We saw someone pull up right behind you. He was on a bike. But what is the general feeling of the crowd there? Are they confrontational? Are they saying anything to you?
They're angry. They're not necessarily angry at me. They're not necessarily angry at the media. They're angry. They're angry at what's been going on the last couple of days. They're angry at this immigration policy that they protested back in February. Remember back on February 2nd when protesters at the time got onto the 101. That was the kind of initial set-off point for a lot of these folks. And now that what we've seen over the last 24 hours, I feel like to a degree it's emboldened them. You have the crowd, you have numbers, you have people that are upset, that are frustrated, that are scared, and they want to have their voices heard, and they feel as though the only way they could do it is be as loud and be as disruptive as possible, and they are doing exactly that. I can tell you the vast majority of people here just want to be part of the movement. They want to be part of the resistance. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to be part of assaulting officers, of vandalism, of burning cars, or of anything like that. But being part of it oftentimes means you get awfully close to it. And I think that's what's happening with some folks here, is that you might not want to be part of that car fire, but guess what? When you drive by on your motorcycle and do some burnouts around it, you're part of the action as well. And that's what's happening right now. This is kind of a show of force, a show of resistance, and it's still going strong.
Yeah, and as the mayor alluded to, and as we know, there are legitimate demonstrators out there. There are also people who, after a sporting event, just want to watch something burn.
Hey, Holly,
and so
Perez,
there is a
take care,
distinction
love.
between what is happening right now, whether these cars burning are truly, along with it's not a peaceful demonstration, but whether they're actually out there to make their voices heard, or whether they're just out there to take pictures of themselves in front of a burning car once the crowd is out in the streets.
And Jory, it's an interesting point too, because you mentioned the mayor talking about how she wants it to be peaceful and she doesn't want things to go sideways or anyone to get hurt. I think it's an interesting point because a lot of folks out here have told me this is sad. This is not sad because of what the people are doing. They said it's sad it's come to this. They've reached the boiling point. They're mad and they want to do something about it. And I think that's what the mayor kind of alluded to as well, is the fact that she's not necessarily blaming Angelenos for this. She's blaming what led up to make Angelenos do this. And I think that's a subtle but important difference of the folks out here as well, and what the mayor was trying to convey, in the sense that the Trump administration's immigration policies, the ICE raids that have been happening in the last couple of days here in Los Angeles, brought this city to its breaking point, and that's why Angelenos are doing exactly this. And I think that's the sentiment by and large. I've only talked to a handful of people kind of on the outskirts here who said, this is sad. I hate to see it come to this in the city, but something needs to be done, and this is how they're lashing out.
Right, we've seen those ICE raids play out. LA Mayor Karen Bass alluded to the fact that one of them took place at a Home Depot. We saw some in the garment district, and some factory workers were taken into custody. It is said by the Trump administration that their focus is on the dangerous, the violent, those who have criminal records, who are in this country illegally. But a lot of people in this crowd feel like that is not the focus of what is actually happening. And while some dangerous and violent people are being taken off the streets, there are also upstanding members of society that are being swept up in this as well, and that was not supposed to be what this what has happened. In fact, I heard an affiliate in our nation's capital this weekend who was a Trump voter, who is a U.S. citizen, who was swept up by ICE simply because he looked like he might be here illegally. And once they saw his ID, that it was a real
crazy.
Take the battery out. Take the battery out. I was looking for you. Well, but I'll try to get a good view. What the throw? Chris.
See that guard? Crazy. Yes, LA. I'm not there. I'm just streaming it. I'm not there. I don't know how long I'll be live. Oh, they're moving in.
Forced to deal with it because they are just simply driving down the 101 freeway and dragged into this situation. Again, you see someone with a small child in the back seat. This can be a really scary situation. You don't know how these are going to play out. I don't know if we have Bruce Thomas still on the line, but these can be very scary situations when you're talking about civilians stuck in these situations. That was a woman with a small child in the back seat, now stuck on the 101 with an angry group of demonstrators on the overpass and the surface itself, and law enforcement trying to regain control, Bruce.
Yeah, Jory, it creates a huge problem. You have innocent
kind of police or the fire.
People being frustrated about people being sad. That's all that's going on. And he essentially said, it is what it is. We're enforcing the law. And he said even more emphatically that if you try to resist those officers, if you try to impede those officers, if you try to assault or actually assault those federal agents, you will get arrested and you will be prosecuted. And we saw that yesterday. We saw it to a smaller degree on Friday. And I could imagine that's what we're going to see here as well as these protests have continued all day today. It was an interesting perspective from the U.S. Attorney as well, because obviously he sees it from the other side, is that they are federal agents carrying out these immigration work and the protection of those officers and those agents who are not only carrying out the work like yesterday in Paramount, who were mobilizing at their kind of joining where they were all meeting to start doing that work. And he said there was an assault on officers and they won't stand for that. So it's an interesting point of view that we maybe not necessarily have heard as much over the course of the weekend because of the presence of so many people who are frustrated and fed up with these ICE raids. He said, I wouldn't even call them raids. They are arresting people who have have warrants out for their arrest. He didn't even like the description of calling it an ICE raid. I think the vast majority of this crowd would disagree with that.
Right, and that's why we keep hearing from people like Governor Newsom and the mayor for people begging.
Crazy. Where'd they get these cars from? Nuts. That's crazy. Nuts. So there's 3 cars on fire right now, right there together. Where'd these cars come from? It's progressively getting worse.
People they have arrested, and not all of them were violent criminals with criminal records in their past. Saturday, yesterday, things began in Paramount. We thought it was outside another Home Depot. It actually was outside another Home Depot, but that was not the purpose of this location, why it was chosen. Across the street in Paramount, there was a DHS facility where authorities were staging more actions to be taken yesterday. That demonstration grew violent. It was pushed down the street into Compton, where, again, things turned violent. A car was lit on fire.
Okay.
Firefighters and law enforcement came under attack from thrown projectiles. And then it continued last night here at the Federal Building in downtown, the detention center, where people were being held. Back to today, another demonstration began in Boyle Heights, walked their way across the river and the freeway over to downtown, again gathering at the Federal complex there. There was a second demonstration today at 2 p.m. outside
Right,
City Hall.
Deb.
More than
We'll just
1,000
go off
people
to
were
other
gathered
cities.
there. They made their way and joined the group at the bottom of the hill down at Alameda and Temple at the federal building, and that's where the bulk of the confrontation happened today. At some point, with federal troops, those federalized National Guards members on hand, the LAPD was called in to move in and back those people up, and they did that, clearing out Alameda, pushing them into the intersection, and gaining control of that situation. As that was happening, some of the crowd dispersed, made their way around the facility, back to the north side and onto the 101 freeway. That took about an hour at least to clear that situation. California Highway Patrol was brought in because once you're on the freeway, that is now state jurisdiction. So the state patrol of the California Highway Patrol came in, cleared off that freeway service, spreading people out once again, and now they have moved to Los Angeles Street, where their ire has been focused on a fleet of Waymo cars, lighting all 5 of them on fire. And that's about where we stand here at the 6 o'clock hour, with those cars now melting down to the pavement.
That was a really good way of summing everything up, and that really just goes to show, day by day, demonstration by demonstration, and the longer that the National Guard is in town, protesters, they're just getting angrier and angrier. And I actually saw a picture, Governor Gavin Newsom shared it online. It really just conveys like the tone and the message that the protesters are trying to convey. They're angry. The tensions are just at an all-time high. He said Trump is trying to manufacture a crisis in LA County, deploying troops not for order, but to create chaos. Don't take the bait, never use violence or harm law enforcement. I really wish that the last part of that message, the demonstrators could have at least, listened to that a little bit more. But I mean, they're angry. They're just, tensions are at an all-time high, and like Tim said, they're at their breaking point.
Right, and we have seen this kind of escalate at times. It ebbs and it flows, it waxes and wanes, and we have seen dangerous situations, and things do seem to be calming down. We can't really find any kind of confrontation point throughout all the different locations right now. On either side of the federal facility, we see a line here of officers blocking this roadway, but no one really in their face, as we have seen. The cars continue to burn on Los Angeles Street, but there are no skirmish lines as we see. The 101 freeway is back open again, at least northbound. The southbound side has been cleared. I think CHP units remain on the surface. The roadway has not reopened to traffic, but things do seem to be calming down. The question is, will they remain?
Last night in Los Angeles, we watched it very closely. There was a lot of violence there. There was a lot of violence, and it could have gotten much worse. And you have an incompetent governor. Just take a look at the train stations that he's building. Like 20 times over budget. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. So I did call him the other night. I said, look, you got to take care of this, otherwise I'm sending in the troops. That's what we did.
Are you prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act?
Depends on whether or not there's an insurrection. No, but you have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it. I think that you're going to see some very strong law and order. Last night in Los Angeles,
What are
the Waymo vehicles over by Alfera Street, and I was wondering what they were doing, but then I remember they're driverless, so they're kind of stuck in confusion, and then they became easy targets for some of the agitated protesters to burn and torch.
Right, and we talked to Tim a little bit earlier as well. He said that the protesters, they are agitated, and they have a lot of resentment toward, I mean, it's not just what's going on right now, but even toward the media as well. What do you think, if you could put yourself in those protesters' shoes, like the minds of them, what do you think is going on right now? And as we head into the evening hours, you think that things are starting to calm down and they're starting to cool off? What's your prediction on that?
You know, like I said, I believe this is a lull in the fight. I think once the sun goes down, you're going to see more protesters come back. You're going to see a takeover of the freeway again, and you're going to see more, we'll call it anarchism, if you will, for lack of a better word. These people are just not happy with the media, with the police, with anything, and everybody's being lumped into one large group.
Right, and right now we are looking at a live view. I believe this is live. I don't think this is video from earlier. This is earlier. Okay, this is video from earlier on the right, but on the left, I see down there it says earlier. On the left, this is the live view, and it looks like some law enforcement, they're making their way toward an area. I'm not sure which direction they're going to, which street this is exactly, but we're getting a wider view. They're heading down the street and interested to see what their next move is going to be. We panned away from the Waymo. I think that scene is kind of just playing out on its own. The fire's just going to continue to keep running, but it's interesting to see what is the next step right now.
Yeah, you know, I think law enforcement is regrouping, meaning they're getting some additional personnel that are going off shift.
You think while they were out there protesting, they care about an attorney? Because I don't.
They're being
I don't think they care about it
suited up,
while they're
if
out
you
there
will,
protesting.
with equipment and resources for the rest of the night. And you'll see them move into those areas to relieve some of those day shift personnel.
Hey Bruce, we are seeing what looks like those flashbangs continue to go off. We can't spot where the officers would be. Have you been watching? Are you seeing flashbangs, or are these fireworks being set off by members of the demonstration?
You know, at this point, I believe they're fireworks because I've been looking at some different coverages, and I don't see the officers deploying those less than lethal weaponry. So at this point, I believe it's fireworks.
Okay.
Possibly the same group that torched the Waymo vehicles.
And we're now looking at the mounted officers from the LAPD. A lot of people at our station, Bruce, had the same reaction once the horses were being moved in to confront some of these demonstrators, just worried about the horses themselves. I'm not sure the experience you have with these, with the mounted. We do see projectiles being thrown at these officers here, and they are firing back less than lethal projectiles. But the training that goes into these mounted officers, the horses, to deal with these situations, we wouldn't think that they would be suited to go into a situation like this. As we're watching this, one person stick their head out of a car, and
there's a group of people in that car too.
Okay, let's see if we can swing the helicopter around, because this is the first kind of action we've seen in probably about an hour between people on the ground and officers. So I will get back to that question again, the training of the horses, Bruce, in a little bit as we watch this play out. But I guess we can answer it right now. Just the fact that they're able to handle loud situations like this with protesters in their face.
Yeah, the horses and the mounted officers go over hundreds of hours of training. The horses are accustomed to loud noises.
AI Banks, I don't believe that. I don't believe anybody
basically loud everything. The
I haven't
horses are
seen the
very
police
well
be
maintained on
over-aggressive
that.
to
The
just
horses
arson
are also
people.
protected with their face.
And I've been watching
with
it
a
all day.
mask of plexiglass, and also the mounted officers are protected, but they're also supported by officers on the ground too.
I would almost have to
The
guess by
mounted
now, if
units
you're in this
are
area, you know what
awesome
you're in.
tools to clear crowds. I've used them, and only second to motorcycle officers. They're very, very effective.
Bruce, can you tell us usually when do they make the call to bring the horses in? Like, how bad does the situation have to be?
You know, I was kind of surprised that we didn't see them till just now, meaning, you know, maybe an hour ago. They're a great tool to use with law enforcement, and they do clear crowds. People do not want to stand in front of a horse that, you know, outweighs them by a couple hundred pounds. So I was kind of surprised we didn't see them, but now they're being used, and they're being used very effectively.
So I'm just curious, obviously I don't have much training when it comes to just knowing law enforcement and when they use the horses. You explained that really well, how it helps with clearing the crowds. But I'm curious, why haven't they moved further in toward the crowd right now, now that they are on the horses, if they can clear the crowds?
You know, it seems like they're just trying to maintain an operational area. I'm surprised they haven't been used to clear so that LA City Fire can move in and put these vehicles out. But I think they're very content in just letting them burn, as they do have lithium batteries in them, which presents a whole other problem for the fire department and for the safety of everybody involved. But I can tell you, once the mounted units are called, they respond, and they respond very effectively.
As we're watching this play out, Bruce, stand by for a moment. There is reaction coming in from around the country and around the world. There is a post from Ileana Garcia. She is the co-founder of Latinas for Trump, who writes, I want to put myself on the record, Garcia writes, says, this is not what we voted for. I have always supported Donald Trump through thick and thin. However, this is unacceptable and inhumane. I understand the importance of deporting criminal aliens, but what we are witnessing are arbitrary measures to hunt down people who are complying with their immigration hearings, in many cases with credible fear of persecution claims, all driven by a Stephen Miller-like desire to satisfy a self-fabricated deportation goal. This undermines the sense of fairness and justice that the American people value. Again, that is the co-founder of Latinas for Trump, Ileana Garcia. And so as we continue to circle around downtown Los Angeles, which has been the site of unrest for coming up on 72 hours now, and we have seen the National Guard of California federalize 2,000 troops. We see a fire crew moving through to put out 5 electric self-driving cars that have been burned, and a line of officers that continue to fire non-lethal rounds to try and break up crowds that are throwing projectiles at them. This tonight is the state of Los Angeles, under siege from a lot of different fronts here. You talk about people upset that the federal government is getting involved and in occupying, invading our city. You have another side who says that illegal immigrants have invaded and occupied our city, and it's coming to a head on the streets of Los Angeles again tonight.
And it's just looking at these images, it's just so heartbreaking seeing that these people are so angry, and this is what we are seeing, the aftermath of the anger and the tensions, and you understand both sides. You understand that people, they have their right to their opinion, but acting out in this way, this was supposed to be a peaceful protest turned very just not peaceful. So Mayor Bass said it best in her press conference. I'm trying to find my notes from that. She said Angelenos have the right to exercise their First Amendment right, but peacefully and not like this.
Yeah.
So we don't like seeing scenes like this.
Can we zoom in on the bottom of the screen? Is that a barricade wall that these folks have set up? Okay, oh, Gabe's back? Okay, great. We've got Gabe Santos back in Air 7. It looks like they have taken some barricades here. Some, are those chairs? Those might be chairs from Grand Park. They might have dislodged those from Grand Park or somewhere.
Wow.
And put up a barricade here in the middle of the road and firing things, throwing things at officers who are firing back. Gabe Santos, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Jory, Nico, we keep talking about this multi-pronged situation here. You have the Waymos that are burning to the north of the 101 freeway. This is to the south of the 101 as it cuts through downtown near Main. And I think the other cross there is, looks like that's the Los Angeles. No, this is Main and First Street, I believe. We'll get the exact cross there for you shortly. It is very near to City Hall. And what happened is some of the protesters started building a bit of a kind of a fort, if you will, using those chairs, as you said, possibly from a nearby art installation. We're dealing with the trees and the buildings here, trying to get you the best shot as possible. But you can see a few of those protesters back there, and LAPD actually got on their radios and reported that they were taking projectiles that were being thrown by the protesters towards officers. So officers are trying to get more resources in this area, and this is where about maybe 30 or 40 minutes ago there was that skirmish that erupted from the protesters after this freeway situation. This is the Aliso ramp onto the 101, where a lot of protesters were pushed back up onto surface streets. They were on the 101 earlier. You could see there, it looks like one side of the 101 is open. There are those Waymos there. That one that caught fire on First is now, that appears to be a complete loss. No surprise there, but it is probably going to completely burn to the ground. LA City Fire doesn't want any part of this. They for just mere safety of their personnel, they are not going to work their way into this area. And LAPD, they have
Mounted patrol's not going to wait too long.
Earlier to see if federal units were available, additional federal units were available to actually help LAPD deal with what was going on in this intersection here. You could see a lot of debris on the ground.
They got 2,000 National Guard at the Fed
and
building that the
LAPD,
governor
for
didn't
obvious
want help
reasons, being
with.
told that the federal forces don't have anybody to spare, really. They are focused on guarding the federal building and making sure things are okay there. So LAPD using their mounted units to maintain a blockade on this intersection. And Rob, as we tilt down, they are now dealing with what is an apparent blockade by some protesters using these chairs, like we said, from a nearby art installation, as building a fort, if you will. Looks like some construction signs and various other signs. And this is where things get pretty interesting. It looks like some of them are backing up now. I'm not sure. Okay, yes. So LAPD is now making a move forward. They are using some of their less than lethal fire, rubber bullets presumably, and they are making a move forward. So LAPD not letting this fort, if you will, become any more fortified, and they are making a move and having these protesters disperse and hopefully preventing something a little more serious from happening further down. So you can see those mounted units continuing down, those units on foot continuing to fire that less than lethal fire towards those protesters. You see that looks like that was, I'm not sure if that was a smoke grenade or if that was a water bottle from some of the protesters being thrown at one of the horses. And those horses are continuing to make their way down the street towards where that fort was. You can now see it's been completely destroyed, and they are continuing to push protesters down. I'm not sure if that's a bag rolling or if that's, or if it's...
That's a person.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's actually a person that was just kind of continuing to roll down, and that officer on horseback is... forcefully suggesting that that person get up and continue moving down the street. And you could see here these other protesters, some of them were building that barricade on the street a little to the top of the frame.
Yeah.
They are now being dispersed further down the street, and those officers with those rubber bullets continuing to make headway here.
And as we watch this play out, Gabe, I want to go to Bruce Thomas real quick and ask him about the sticks that we see those mounted officers using. We saw batons earlier deployed on guys on the skirmish line, on the front lines, but we are seeing these officers mounted using some kind of stick to kind of beat back these demonstrators.
Get a camouflage, right?
Get
a camouflage.
That some departments still have their patrol officers carry. Being on horseback, the straight stick is longer. You're able to reach out. You're able to move people with it. But what we've seen also is the officers intermixed with the horses. And that's part of the training. The horses are not afraid of the flashbangs of the R1 rounds when they go off. And assaulting a horse is a grade 1 felony. And I can tell you, if we saw some people throw stuff at the horses, those officers will make the point to take those people to jail.
Yeah.
Bruce, I'm curious, you mentioned the straight stick. That's what the weapon that they're using is called. What are the injuries like with a straight stick if you get hit by it with the force that they're showing today?
Kind of like a baseball bat. It's made of wood, it's laminated. So if you get hit with it, you may have a welt or a bruise. It's not something that's going to totally incapacitate you, as it's more for glancing blows to move people, and then the horse and the mounted officer will move past the problem, so to speak.
And we see those chairs and debris and barricade being carried away from this location. Again, another crowd once again gathering outside City Hall in the middle of the street. Blocking traffic and trying to set up looks like another barricade. That is directly outside LA City Hall. Once again, we saw Molina Park there on the left, City Hall on the right, and as we go down, it's down towards LAPD headquarters, which is right across the street from City Hall. So at the bottom of your screen now, that angled triangular building, that is LAPD headquarters. Right there, don't have to travel far to kind of see the thick of where this is happening tonight. And you can also kind of see just the juxtaposition, how far away the earlier skirmishes were at Alameda and Temple. That's the federal complex where the detention center, the courthouse, and all of that plays out. Across a little further.
Jory?
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, by all means.
one of the things we haven't seen yet is any protests at the federal building property in Westwood, which has always been a target for anti-war, immigration protests, and obviously this type of thing. But we haven't seen that yet, and that would create a huge problem for law enforcement. Now you're fighting a battle on two major fronts.
Right. Well, let's go back up to Gabe Santos in Air 7, who continues to watch this this section subfleet of Waymos that drew the attention and the ire of those demonstrators. Nothing left but some burning embers and melting plastic there, Gabe.
Yeah, those 5 Waymos, a complete loss here. Luckily, you know, these Waymos are owned by the Waymo
You're right,
company,
it is huge.
subsidiary
They're all over the place,
Alphabet,
all over
and Google
Los
is
Angeles.
a major shareholder of that company. So
Oklahoma City
at the
Thunder
very
Twins,
least, we know that these aren't owned by
45.
individuals that may, you know, struggle to get to work tomorrow. But nonetheless, we never want to see this kind of vandalism and property destruction. You know, we have 5 vehicles on fire in the middle of a city street, in the middle of downtown LA. That's not something that we want to see. And as we were mentioning before, LA City Fire, they really have no reason to get involved here and get close to the scene here, because LAPD doesn't have anybody to spare to provide security for those firefighters, and they don't want to risk anything there. So the Waymo fires are pretty much self-contained at this point, and law enforcement officials are just content with letting those fires burn out and hoping that there's no more fires in that regard. But really, we'll just have to see what the night holds. But we do have these multiple kind of skirmishes and multiple kind of fronts to this protest going on right now on Los Angeles Street, where we have those Waymos on fire, and now the new kind of hotbed of activity more towards City Hall as we continue to make an orbit on the west side of downtown, and we get view of City Hall on I believe that's going to be Main Street and Los Angeles Street. It looks like this is going to be Temple and Main Street, actually, and that's where we're seeing a number of police officers reloading, and we actually heard some reports earlier that they were running low on less than lethal ammo. So there is reports that LAPD is working to get more less than lethal rounds on the scene here, so that officers can continue maintaining the control of the area. But as we widen out the shot, Rob, I want to see what the situation is on the left side of the City Hall building, because we saw a lot of protesters gathering there. You see those officers on horseback on Temple and Spring Street as we tilt down. Protesters have kind of made another barrier, if you will.
Much love to all you guys. As always.
Officers are now playing with protesters. They made a barricade, if you will, with those pink chairs and those plastic construction signs a little further down on 1st and Main, I believe. And now it appears that another one is being set up. But this is an area, let's see.
Lockjaw family rising up like a storm. Oklahoma, Kansas roots been reborn. Texas fires burned under California skies. OHIO screaming into the night. Smith & Wesson, locked, loaded, they gleam. German Shepherd pups chasing down their dreams. Fire it up from the plains to the hills. Kansas hearts beat wild, unchained by their wills. Smith & Wesson, locked, loaded, they gleam. German Shepherd pups chasing down their dreams. Fire it up from the plains to the hills. Kansas hearts beat wild, unchained by their wills. Devin, sit back, I got mighty good they cry. Mama lost, holds her head in the sky. Marvin Valley Part 20 battled her way. Jezebel witch won't be silenced today. Bitter winds howl on the edge of the plains. Dust and struggle carve lives in their veins. Legends whispered in the fields they blaze. Ignite the night, set the world in a craze. Lost and found in the shadow of fight. Family names tacked the call.